Hi, welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show. Another exciting show, definitely another exciting guest. Today we're going to go into the mind of the road to the NFL. What's that like? How do you prepare to get there? I know we had a lot of athletes that's been on the show, but everybody's story is different. Now, just imagine this. You have the name Ogden. Your brother's already ahead of you. And just like brothers, you know, you want to follow that same path. Today, we got the same journey coming back onto the show. Let's welcome the one, the only, Mr. Hall of Fame, soon to be himself, joining his brother, Marques Ogden. Welcome to the show, big guy.
How you doing, man? How's it going, my friend?
It's doing great. Look like you're sitting out there looking at a baseball game or soccer. Which one is it?
It's softball, man. So I have my daughter is 10 years old, and she plays softball at a little like YMCA, type
Yeah,
of league here. I live in right outside of Raleigh, North Carolina.
right.
So it's called Cary, North Carolina. So she's in a little Cary league, and she's got this game and one more that she's done for the season, and she's back to basketball in the summer and the fall.
Genes are crazy, aren't they?
Hey man, hey man. Her uncle played sports. I did. Her grandfather played football at Howard University.
Yeah.
Both her great grandfathers played sports in the army. Yeah, man. And she had a great grandmother that
Wow.
was I'm sorry, a great grandmother. Excuse me. That was 6'4". So my great grandmother was 6'4". So her great grandmother was 6'4".
That's crazy. Let's talk about that genetic pool of your family. A lot of people don't realize that legacies and genes are passed down, and they're really called, from our culture, we call them gifts from the ancestors. Tell the viewers a little bit about you.
Yeah, man. So I'm from Washington, D.C. I went to St. John's College High School in Northwest D.C. From there, I went to Howard University, got to play for the Bison, which was awesome because our father, Cheryl Philip Ogden, who actually raised us by himself when our parents divorced, our dad was also a Howard Bison graduate.
Wow.
He was actually the first class that got full scholarships to actually play football at the Mecca, or I call it Howard University.
Right.
So yeah, from DC, elementary school, middle school, high school, and college. Went to an all Northwest DC. Stevens Elementary, Northwest DC, St. John's College High School, Northwest DC, Howard University, Northwest DC. So I was able to become a 4-year starter
Hmm.
at Howard playing for the Bison.
Right.
And then I was drafted, and I'm still today the only offensive lineman drafted from Howard University to the National Football League. I went to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I played for my rookie head coach, Jack Del Rio.
Wow. Wow. That's crazy. In 2003, the sixth pick of the draft, I might add. Did,
Oh yeah, no, I was drafted in the 6th round in the draft in 2003.
yeah, that was a decent little draft class. Let's go back a little bit. You went to Howard.
Mhm.
Your family's legacy is there. Were there any other colleges that you looked at? Because sometimes, even though we want to keep that in the family by following that trajectory, we still have to sometime venture off onto our own path. Did you have any other decisions that you wanted to do besides going to Howard?
That's a great question, Andre. So it's interesting. Unfortunately for me, my high school coach had me classified wrong when I left high school. So he had me as a junior. So when I was a senior,
Hmm.
so the only school that gave me an offer was Howard University. I remember I was very close to going to the University of Maryland at the time. Now, at the time, they were not very good.
Right.
The head coach was Ron Vanderlinden,
Hmm.
and Steve Greatwood was the O line coach. And it came down to me and another guy who was a defensive end from actually an arch rival high school,
Right.
Bishop McNamara, William Shime.
Right.
And if they had one scholarship left, I remember getting a phone call from Coach Greatwood said, Marcus, unfortunately, we're going to offer the scholarship to William Shime. He accepted. if you want to come to University of Maryland, we would love to have you as a preferred walk-on. You'll still get a lot of the treatment. You'll redshirt your first year, get big, get strong. You could
Mm-mm.
become a starter and get a scholarship your next year.
Right.
And unfortunately, that was not an option because I could not afford that. And
Right.
so when Howard said, here's your full scholarship offer, Steve Wilson, who actually played for the Cowboys and the Broncos, sat down in my parents' living room and said, Mr. and Mrs. Ogden, we want Marcus at Howard. We're prepared to give him a full scholarship. And we truly believe this. If he does what he's supposed to do and he learns from his brother and our coaches and puts the work ethic and puts the work in,
Mm-hmm.
he can be drafted to the National Football League. And of course, I'm like, there's no way. Like, I haven't gotten an offer
Right.
like other than you guys. This I got to myself, of course.
Right.
But I'm like, man, there's no way. And
They told
so
you this as a freshman. I didn't mean to cut you off.
it was.
They told you this as a true freshman coming in that you got NFL potential.
They sure did
Man,
right
that's
before
crazy.
I came in.
That's crazy.
Yes, sir.
What did you think
So
about that? What was your take on that?
So for me, what happened is, I was like, man, that's awesome. But of course, Andre, you're, a young kid, 17-year-old kid. You haven't had a lot of exposure to big schools. And, you don't really know anything about, even in Howard, I consider it a big school. It was in the 1AA program. It's
Right.
a big college, Division One. And so it was awesome to hear that. But of course, you don't know if that's actually true or they're just saying it. But
Mm-hmm.
of course, because it was my only offer, I was eating it all up. But it was awesome because getting to Howard and when I got there, it was awesome for me to actually be around the heritage. My dad went there and Howard had some phenomenal football players there. And again, we played in some really a tough conference. We played in the MEAC. We played against guys from like the SWAC, Jackson State,
Mm-hmm.
Arkansas Pine Bluff, all these things. And it's interesting, right, man? From my senior, right, from Black College when I came out, right, in 2003,
Mm-hmm.
we had 10, 9 or 10 players that got drafted in that draft class.
Yeah.
I don't think that'll ever happen again. So we had my boy Rasheem Mathis, who got drafted to the Jaguars with me out of Bethune-Cookman.
Right.
Courtney Van Buren was drafted in the 3rd round out of Arkansas Pine Bluff. We had Vashante Shanko, was drafted in the 3rd round out of Morgan State.
Mm-hmm.
We had Zuriel Smith, who was drafted out of Hampton. And probably the most well-known of our draft class was Robert Mathis, who got drafted in the 5th round out of Alabama A&M to the Colts. And let me tell you something. Robert Mathis is in the 100 sack club in the NFL. He had he had 28 sacks his senior year in college.
Why do you think the coach drafted him? Why do you think we drafted him?
But so his thing, man, and he was a undersized lineman, but Dungy saw in him
Right.
something that a lot of people didn't see was that work ethic.
Right.
And Mathis, you had on one side, Mathis on the other. You couldn't double both of them.
Yeah.
Like they literally played off each other. Like you could not double both ends. It was impossible. So let me tell you something, man. That was some great football back then. I love being part of the HBCU heritage.
And you know what? You probably said something that's truly true. I went to Albany State. It's a black HBC school. But you don't get many opportunities like that in the NFL to draft so many great players from HBC school. I don't think that's going to happen for quite some time.
I don't either, man. And it's quite unfortunate, right, Andre, that there hasn't been a HBCU player drafted in a couple of years. They've had guys go to camp and they've had guys invited and stuff like that, which is great. But I would love to see get back to the heritage of some real. I mean, guys like Walter Payton is a black college player. I mean, Deacon Jones was a black college player. Doug Williams went to Grambling. I can go on and on. And so I would love to see it get back to having more guys play there and have those guys be drafted to the National Football League.
Let's go back a minute. You mentioned something when you went to college before we get into your NFL career, because I know you're with your daughter and I respect that. I love the fact that you're there. I do the same thing when my daughter was little, going to all the games and soccer games and so forth. But let's go back a little bit. You got some shoes to follow. the speculation determined the way the contract read for you to go to school. You got some big shoes to fill. Let's talk about those big shoes. Jonathan, your big brother. What did he? How much of an impact did Jonathan have on you as far as your evolution to college and transferring into the NFL? Like how much of an
Oh,
impact? Because they want you to be like him with the same worth ethic, the whole 9 yards. And you've done it, but what did your brother share with you, and what's it like for him being your brother?
he shared with me a lot of tips and secrets of the game that he did not share with anybody else.
Mm,
My brother is, in my opinion, the best offensive lineman, definitely tackle, but I think offensive lineman in NFL's history.
mm-hmm,
And he got that way, right, Andre, because he was coached that beast mindset, that beast mentality.
mm-hmm.
He was getting great coaching from the seventh grade. So
Wow,
he had the same line coach in seventh grade, eighth grade, all the way through high school for 6 years in a row.
that's
Got to
good.
UCLA, had a lot of different coaches around him that really weren't great technicians, but he didn't need it because
Mm-hmm,
for 6 years straight, he had the same technique, the same great perspective, the
mm-hmm,
same great coaching. So
mm-hmm.
he didn't have to change a damn thing.
Right.
And so he taught me a lot of that.
Mm-hmm,
And that's what makes great linemen, right? Playing offensive line, it's not like you have to be the fastest, the strongest.
mm-hmm.
That stuff definitely helps.
Right.
But if you understand body angles, positioning, mechanics,
Mm-hmm,
leverage,
mm-hmm,
hand placement, eye position, nose position, body position, if you can master those keys of the position,
mm-hmm.
you can be a phenomenal football player, right? But
Right.
the key is, right, Andre, like anything else, it takes time.
Right.
And that's when I didn't get great coaching in high school. I got my brother, thank goodness. But again, my brother, when I was in high school coming up, he was at UCLA.
Right.
And so for 2 years, I didn't have him. Now, my last 2 years of high school, I did have him because he got drafted by Baltimore.
Right.
But again, he was a rookie and a first year guy. So in college, after he got himself settled into the NFL, into his position, and became a steadfast cornerstone of the Ravens, franchise,
Mm-hmm.
then he could give me a more of his time, a lot more of his energy, a lot more of his effort.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I started to excel. So for me, looking back at football, right? I got to Howard. I was good as a freshman, right? As a redshirt freshman, I started, played well. My second year, I did pretty good, but my third year and my fourth year, right, my last 2 years
Mm-hmm.
were exceptional
Mm-hmm.
because my brother and I spent a lot more time with the position, with the mechanics, with all the things I need to have done. And that's how I was able to get so much better,
Mm-hmm.
so much faster, because my brother played a huge role in teaching me the game when I really struggled to get the concepts down
Mm-hmm.
until he was able to really pour into me. Once he did that, right, Andre, it just steamrolled from there.
It's funny that you mentioned the NFL and technique, and I think a lot of people don't understand when you get drafted. Is the difference between Pee Wee, junior high, high school, college. Now you're with the big dogs. And there's usually only a thread of margin between the guy that got drafted, the guy that's got your position, the second, and the third guy. What's your take on that? And how much did you ever get frustrated when you first got there? Because the fact that you already have a brother, the fact that you're trying to make money, you got drafted, but you're slacking on technique. Because a lot of guys go into the league and they think, oh, well, I was good in college. I can go in there and master this. And then it's a rude awakening because you know what? Like you just said, it's a whole different ball game. Technique, skill set, coaching, all this stuff now comes into play. And then when you look back, you go, wow, you know what? I really didn't have all the tools. What was that like for you transitioning?
Oh, it was difficult because what I realized when I got to the NFL is that a lot of the guys had a lot of the things I didn't have in college, which is okay, but it's frustrating because my work ethic was never in question,
Right.
right? But again, as you're trying to push forward, Sometimes the challenge is, do you have access to the best facilities? Do you have
Right.
access to the best meals, the best nutrition, the best training table? You have access to the best recovery, to the best things like that. And again, Howard was a phenomenal place to play football, but Howard didn't have the financial resources
Mm-hmm.
of the bigger schools.
Right.
Now, when I got to the NFL, again, even thinking about it in that regard, right? Every team has five-star stuff, right? But then there's some franchises that have more five-star stuff than other franchises
Mm.
because they're making more money. They've got,
Right.
sometimes owners, they want to put more money in, right? New locker room, new weight room, things like that. So that's why I love the way it's going today,
Mm.
because there's a lot more equality with how the owners are getting the pie split from TV contracts. And it's a lot of things. Like, for example, the Jaguars are building a brand new stadium.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's awesome.
Right.
The Buffalo Bills, Terry Pagula ripped out the old locker room, dropped $60 million to have a new locker room, new facilities, new training, new medical place, new medical equipment, more plush, accommodations. That's why the Bills, when people go to the Bills, they don't want to leave,
Right.
right?
Right.
So again, right, and I learned this playing the game,
Mm-hmm.
that at the end of the day, you have to show up, right? And you have to show out, because it's not gonna, but life's not fair, right? Life's not fair. I mean, I love my brother. I'm almost 6'6", I'm 6'5.5", 6'6".
Mm-hmm.
Jonathan's 6'9".
Right.
You know what I mean? It's different.
Right.
So I tell people, you have to have the beast mentality to
Mm-hmm.
show up and show out with what you have when the opportunity comes, and you cannot make excuses. But again, was it frustrating? Of course it was. But again, like anything else, if it's that important to you,
Mm-hmm.
you will learn. And I learned quickly how to adapt and to adjust to the NFL with I mean, because there were some monsters, man. Like,
Yeah.
I had never seen guys that big, that strong, that fast when I was at Howard. I didn't see guys the size of like John Henderson running
Right.
4.8s or 4.85s, or Marcus Stroud, or guys like Akanaya was a ran a 4.4 in the 40 at 240-pound
Yeah.
DN out of Purdue. Like, I didn't see all that. But
Mm-hmm.
again, once I learned, once I got adjusted, once I had a chance to get myself settled, then that's when I said, okay, now I can do this. So it's like anything else, right, Andre? You have to adjust,
Right.
you have to put the work in, and excuses are not acceptable.
You played for several teams. What did you learn from each one of the teams? And we're not gonna talk too much longer because I know you got to deal with your daughter. We're gonna let the audience know we're gonna come back with part two at a later date to learn more about Marcus's fascinating career. Because I'm excited. I probably learned more in this few minutes with you than I have with some of the other guys I've had on the show. But let's go back to this question. You went to several teams. What did you learn from each one of those teams? You mentioned something that's real crucial that I never thought about: money, investment.
Oh,
The
oh,
owners, the
oh,
owners
yeah.
investing in the team, in the development of their team versus just drafting players. They're putting their money behind the players with new facilities, new equipment, new medical stuff. I've never heard that until you just brought it up. Vital point. You went to several different teams. What was that like for you, and what did you learn from each one of them?
So Jacksonville was a phenomenal place to play football. It was owned by the Weaver family. The Weaver family did everything they needed to do, but they weren't as, I'll say gung ho as when I went to Baltimore and Steve Bisciotti took the team over from the Modell family.
Mm-hmm.
Bisciotti was a young owner, he was a new owner, he was a very successful businessman. So again, right, what happens? When I go to the Ravens, when Bisciotti comes in, they built the castle. They
Right.
built the Ravens complex where we had the practice facilities, the locker room, the state-of-the-art equipment, all the bells and whistles, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what it was, right? Then I went to Buffalo. Ralph Wilson, phenomenal human being, great owner. He did not put the type of same money that Bisciotti did into the Bills, right?
Mm-hmm.
We had a lot of older things, older locker room, older equipment, right? We didn't have the things that Baltimore did. Then in Tennessee, Bud Adams, he was more into this, like Steve Bisciotti. Bud put a lot into the team. Great facilities, nice locker rooms, big place, big stuff. So again, the ownerships were all different.
Mm.
All did more than enough to be great owners with their franchises. But some owners went above and beyond others. And that's business, right?
Right,
And
right.
again, in Jacksonville, I learned a lot from Jack Del Rio, who was a kick-ass middle linebacker
Yes, he
with the
was.
Vikings. I learned a lot about toughness
Right.
and mindset and grit. When I
Mm.
went to Baltimore under Brian Billick, Brian was not an athlete in the NFL, but he was a great coach, great mind. I learned a lot more about media and how to present yourself,
Right.
how to be confident, how to come across if that times were hard, how to still represent yourself to the media in the best light and always be professional.
Correct.
When I played for Mike Malarkey, former player, Mike was a great guy who was a little bit more meek, a little bit more mild, but he always taught us about discipline and hard work. We were in pads until week 16 practicing in Buffalo,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
And with under Jeff Fisher, learned a lot about how to really blend your professional career to your personal life and how to still keep yourself in a position where you're able to have a healthy balance with your family life. Jeff was big on football, but he was also big on family and enjoying yourself and treating it as a career, right? But at the same time, having other things you need to do so you're not always just so gung ho on football. That way, you're not just solely focusing on the game, you're focusing on the game, but also life beyond the game or things that you can really do to help you be better at the game because you're focusing things like family, your children, things like that. And in some cultures, like, man, look, family events, no matter what we have to do practice wise, if it's like a kid's graduation,
Hmm.
a big recital, a big event, you go to it.
Right.
So the NFL is like anything else, right? I'll tell everybody this whole thing. I tell like this whole Shador Sanders thing.
Right.
It's a business.
Right.
Owners run a business. They can hire the employees that they choose.
Right.
Period.
Right.
At the end of the day, though, I tell people it is a business. Never forget that. I know you're a fan. I know
Yeah.
you love the sport,
Right.
but to the owners, it is all about the bottom line because they are invested in this business
Right.
to grow a business and to make their franchise much more valuable. And that's just the way it is.
Marcus, hold on to that thought. We definitely gonna have you come back, and we're gonna finish up with part two of the life. Oh, it's almost like the ESPN, the life of Marques Ogden on part two of this show. That way you can go and enjoy your daughter. I appreciate you taking a little bit of time to at least come and bless me by being on the show. We're gonna come back with part two, reschedule, and have you come back on. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Crayton show.